and he's running for City Council District 3, Post 1. Will you guys join me in welcoming Neal to the podium?
Well, thank you very much, Joe and Kellianne and all you Rotarians. Ann Lerner invited me to the Tucker Cityhood Initiative back in 2014, and I'm glad I joined that effort. I also was involved in canvassing and monitoring the vote in our historic incorporation vote in November of 2015. After that, Bill Rosenfeld asked me to get involved with the review of proposals for management services for the city. I was appointed to the inaugural Zoning Board of Appeals in the fall of 2016. I've been there for the whole time, so I guess I've done a fair job, or they might have kicked me off by now. I was also appointed about 3 years ago to represent the city's development and infrastructure interests on DeKalb County's water and wastewater master planning effort. So let me tell you a little bit about my focus and how I intend to serve Tucker. We want to deliver a high level of service. In other words, the things we've committed to do through our charter, we want to do it at the very best that we can. We want to give value for the tax dollars that each of you give to the county and to Tucker. As you know, we have 3 core services: parks and recreation, planning and zoning, and permitting and code enforcement with accompanying wraparound business services. We also, of course, have tourism because we collect a portion of that hotel motel tax, so we do some of that as well. So as I said, we want to give our residences and businesses value. As you know, we've managed to run this city at a 0 millage rate now. You may say, oh, but don't we pay something for Parks and Rec? Yes, we do now, because we can do that cheaper than the county, so we actually assess that millage rate in the millage rate that the county used to assess. I love that theme song. The county that no longer assesses that of its residents and businesses. And of course, we have additional funds that come in as well. So I think we want to be able to do the very best in delivering services, because really the city is that final point of service delivery. The second bullet is encourage smart growth. So Tucker's population since 2010 has grown a tremendous amount. Would anyone like to take a guess as to the percentage growth we've enjoyed since 2010? How about 38%? I think I remember right when we were doing the incorporation vote, we were around 33,500. We're just over 37,000. In fact, last week's numbers came out, we're at 37,005. Don't forget those 5 as of the census of last year. And many more folks are on the way. We have to acknowledge that this is a happening place. You all know that Tucker Brewing Company had the 4th most popular beer garden in the entire United States. People come to Tucker, and so we have to be ready for them. And so one of the things we have to do is revisit all the master plans that we did at the outset of our cityhood. That's the roadmap to growth for this community. So there's 2 or 3 things I want to talk about. One is the development and redevelopment. So other than some of our parkland, most of our city is built out. So we have to look at developing and redeveloping what we have here in Tucker. And of course, we've got a very diverse landscape, and these plans that I mentioned focus on that. Infrastructure, there's a physical and social aspect to infrastructure, and I'm going to address those further in just a bit. Attracting and growing employers and their workforce. This is very important. That's the lifeblood. I mean, you look at the taxes that businesses pay in this city, and it's tremendous. So one of the things we need to consider is how do we not only continue to attract those businesses, but how do we provide amenities that would attract their employees to live here? How do we create affordable and accessible housing options where employees can live in the community where they choose to work? And Tucker is really great in that regard because we have a true variety of housing stock. The last thing I'll mention as a focus area is creating a nurturing atmosphere for everybody who makes their home and livelihood in Tucker. That includes inclusion and participation and service to our community. And I use that word inclusion as opposed to diversity. The reason for that is there should always be an opportunity for everyone in this community to participate. I think I've counted over 30 different volunteer organizations and probably more that I just don't know about here in Tucker. I know for a number of years I was involved with one called IRO that was started by Holly and Sean Duncan that provided a connecting between service organizations and churches here in Tucker. So inclusion over and with diversity, it gives everyone who wants to participate that opportunity. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about a couple of issues. So I mentioned earlier the infrastructure. Public Works, one of the things we need to really look at is taking care of the infrastructure we already have. And part of that, I think, is strengthening and having additional accountability on the intergovernmental agreements that we have with the county, particularly to address non-emergency work, the day-to-day stuff that needs done. They're Johnny on the spot when there's a real problem, but the day-to-day stuff, not so much. So one of the things we may need to look at as we go along is building out a department, particularly to do some of that day-to-day maintenance, particularly on streets and drainage. We're doing a fabulous job right now, by the way, with the SPLOST management, with the repaving and the sidewalks, but we may need to look at leveraging other contracts and look at standing up a public works area. The second thing I want to focus on is law enforcement. This is a problem in just about every community. We've got a wonderful IGA with the DeKalb County Police Department that's consolidated the policing into a single Tucker precinct. We've got a great working relationship, but as Commander Medlin will tell you, they have a very limited amount of resources. So a couple of ideas, and these are truly my ideas here. One is we take advantage of that American Rescue funding that's coming to us to provide some recruiting and retention incentive pay, bonuses and so forth, particularly for officers or for officers that are hired in our area. Use it as a way to attract some of the best and brightest to the Tucker area. The second thing is look at technology as a way to put more eyes on the ground. Connect neighborhood watches and some of the residential and business video cameras that are out there into the county's FirstNet system. Again, gives us the capability of putting eyes where we can't have officers and use that technology as an opt-in program for businesses and HOAs. We have a number of cameras, for example, in the Tucker Summit CID now that's used to read license plates, and they've been very successful in that regard. So those are time. Okay, well, I just mentioned the last slide. Vote November 2nd. There's certainly lots of opportunities for early voting. Thank you to the City of Tucker and Mayor Allman for the city actually paying the county to have the Tucker precinct as an early voting location. Thank you in advance for your vote. Look forward to representing District 3 and serving all of Tucker. And thanks again to Joe and Kellianne. All right. Questions from any of you, please. So you remember the CARES Act funding from last year. So the current administration has the American Rescue Plan that was approved by Congress a few months ago. That funding is coming, I believe, in two, what they call tranches, which are installments. And what I'm suggesting is some of that money, since infrastructure is sort of the working word rather, is use some of that money to attract and retain officers. Yeah, American Rescue Plan. Yeah, sure. Well, and I understand what you're saying. When we built our church out on Coolidge, this, of course, was a foreign corporation. We had to deal with the county. It was horrendous. So now most of the building permitting takes place in Tucker. About the only thing that doesn't come through Tucker is your watershed assessment, so your sewer connection, and the fire marshal. And I think I hear the most complaints, and others can share on this, about the fire marshal. We get a lot of delays there, but as far as the actual building permitting, well, again, most all of that is being handled by Tucker now. So we might all talk aside and make sure I understand the permitting year specifically. But that was one of the reasons we're incorporated, because of that exact complaint, is that permitting process is too long. And, for a long time, up until about 4 years ago, wasn't automated either. You couldn't submit things online. You had to go deal with them in person. That's a good question. Sure. Well, I tell you, one of the things is, and I've spent some time with both CID directors, Matthew and Emery Morseberger. The entrances to Tucker, I'll say the gateway roads like Lawrenceville Highway, like La Vista, like Mountain Industrial, I think one of the first things we ought to look at is doing something with these seedy hotels. That would solve a whole bunch of problems. You may be familiar that Lawrenceville has started a program where they're acquiring some of these extended stay locations. They're going to look at converting those into housing for people who have been on hard times, as well as redeveloping it for affordable housing. I think we ought to sit down with our friends at the Downtown Development Authority and our brand new redevelopment agency that we've stood up here in the city and look at acquiring some of those properties. That's one place I would start. I think what I see in terms of some of the new housing projects that are sprouting up along Lawrenceville Highway, the one that Rick Porter's doing right now at Morris, that's going to do a lot to help us. I can tell you, as a ZBA, a lot of our early cases had to do with signage, and that was one of the things when my wife and I moved here from Avondale. We had this cute little Tudor English village that we came from. We actually live in a Tudor house here in Tucker. But we looked at all this cacophony of signs and said, we got to clean up the curb appeal of Tucker. And it's a long-term project, but one of the things that the city did here a couple of years ago was revise our sign ordinance, and it's much more streamlined. And I think as businesses turn over and so forth, that's one of the things I think can really improve the aesthetics of the area. Did I sort of hit the question there? Yes. Okay. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your vote November 2nd.